Okay, today I am working through our study guide for Unit 3A, and we're going to start off with solving by factoring. I'm not going to spend a lot of detail on exactly the factoring. If you need help with or want any more explanation than what I provide on the video, please email me or come see me. So, to solve by factoring, I'm telling you all of them will be able to be factored. Okay, we always need to make sure that we have our equation in standard form. That means everything is on one side set equal to 0. So we're good in all of these, but we won't be later on. So just remember that. So I am looking for the greatest common factor between 2x squared and 20. When I look at the numbers, 2 goes into both, and there's an x in both, and I take the lower exponent, so I have 2x. And when I take 2x out of that, I have x left, and when I take 2x out of here, I have a 10. So that's going to be 2x times x minus 10. And I set each factor equal to 0. So 2x equals 0. I don't want x equals. I want x minus 10 equals 0. So when you divide both sides by 2 here, 0 divided by 2 is 0. So we get x equals 10. Excuse me, x equals 0. I was getting ahead of myself there. Or x equals 10. Okay, next one. All right, this is an example of an example where you have to multiply a times c, because that's not a perfect square, so it's not a PST. They don't have anything all in common, so I'm going to say 10 times 3, a times c is 30, and I'm looking for the factors of 30 that give me 17. So you can list out all the factors if you know right ahead of time that 2 and 15, it's positive, so they have to add up to 15, but that's negative 15, so I know both of these are going to be negative. So what I taught most of y'all to do would be to break that up. So if I broke it up, it would be 10x squared minus 2x minus 15x plus 3 equals 0. So the only thing that changed from here to here was the 17 became minus 2x and minus 15x. Carried down the 10x squared and carried down the 3. And then we group the first two and the last two together and carry down that sign. So these two have a common 2x, leaving me with 5x minus 1. Carry down the minus sign. These two have a common 3, and what I've told you to do is to write that one again, 5x minus 1, because if they're not the same, you can't do anything. But check yourself. Negative 3 times 5x is negative 15x. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. So these have to look the same for you to be able to do this next step, which is to say there's a common factor. So I take out 5x minus 1, and I'm left with 2x minus 3. And I set each factor equal to 0. 5x minus 1 equals 0. 2x minus 3 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides. And then divide by 5. I'm running out of the room, so I'm going to write x equals 1/5. Because if you divide by 5, that's 1 over 5. Add 3 to both sides. 2x equals 3. And then I divide by 2, so that's going to be 3 over 2. Okay, I don't want a decimal. This is easy. You don't have to pick up your calculator to do that. Okay, 9x squared minus 4. There's more than one way to do it, but the directions say solve by factoring. So this needs to factor as 3x minus 2, because it's the difference of two squares. It's that a squared minus b squared, which becomes a plus b times a minus b. And I hope you realize that the order doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I write minus and then plus. So that gives me 3x minus 2, 3x plus 2 equals 0. I set each factor equal to 0. And then I solve. So 3x equals 2 and x equals 2 over 3 because I'm dividing by 3, so the 2 is on top. 3x equals negative 2 because I subtract the 2 to take it over, and then divide by 3, so I get negative 2/3. Okay, and the last one of this group, x squared minus 8x plus 12. Okay, that's a perfect square, but 12 is not a perfect square, so it's not a PST. It's not two terms. So I'm going to do the AC thing, and a times c is 12. It's a positive number, so I'm looking for two factors of 12 that add up to 8. And again, you could list them all or know that that's going to be 2 and 6. So I break that up. X squared minus 2x minus 6x plus 12 equals 0. X, oh, I'm looking for, I got to find I got to group, my bad. So group those, group those. We always use that sign between them. These two have a common x, leaving me with x minus 2. Take down the minus sign. These two have a 6. I take out negative 6. Remember, I told you to write the same thing, so that's x minus 2. And check it out. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. Negative 6 times negative 2 is positive 12. So once again, this is my common binomial factor. So x minus 2 times x minus 6 equals 0. Again, set each factor equal to 0. Wrote too many there. X minus 6 equals 0. So this tells me x equals 2 because I add 2 and then I add 6. Okay, visitor, pause. Okay, so if you are one of those people that feel very comfortable with your factoring when you do this on the test, okay, the minimum that you need to write, obviously you need to show me this factoring step. That was really bad, sorry. That, this step, and that step. So some people can get there without the stuff in between, and that's fine. And of course, everything below it you need to be showing me when you're solving by factoring. Okay? All right. Solve by completing the square. Okay? When we solve by completing the square, it's always going to be best if you can make your numbers smaller. So I do notice that there is a 4 that goes into everything here. So this is, I'm going to take a 4 out of everything, and I'm doing that, and I don't have to carry it down because I have an equal sign. So that leaves me with x squared minus 18 equals 6x. And when we complete the square, we bring our variables to one side. So if I take the 6x over, I have to subtract it from both sides. And then you end up adding something. If I take the 18 to the other side, I added it, and then I'm going to add something. So keep in mind, completing the square, you have all the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. And then I take half of this number, and I write it like that, squared, and I square it out over here. And this helps me factor because it's x minus 3 squared. It's that without the 2, that without the 2, and that sign. Every time. 18 plus 9 is 27. And so now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to have x minus 3 equals, I don't need that parentheses. I'll just take that off of there. X minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 27. Okay, and 27, y'all are better at this because we've been practicing. 27 is 9 times 3, and 9 is that perfect square. So that means that I also have to take the 3 to the other side because when you solve, you're trying to get that x all by itself. So I will add the 3 plus or minus. The square root of 9 is 3, and the other 3 stays underneath. So this is what our final answer is. Okay, look at this next one. I have a bunch of mess in here. I need to collect everything on one side. So I'm going to put my variables on the left side. So I'm going to move this one over there and this one over there. When I add 2x squared minus x squared, I'm going to have a positive x squared. I only have the 130x. I will be adding something to complete the square. And then to take the 56 to the other side would be subtracting. So negative 56 and negative 25 give me negative 81 plus something. So I'm going to complete the square by taking half of that number and squaring it. So 15 squared is 225. And then I'm ready to factor. So that becomes that without the exponent, that sign, and that without the exponent. That's the way our PST factors. And negative 81 plus 225 is 144. So if I take the square root of both sides here, that's going to give me x minus 15 equals plus or minus the square root of 144, and I hope you know that's 12. So I have to take the 15 over, and I will do that by adding. So 15 plus or minus 12, and I can't leave it like that because that can be simplified. These two numbers can be combined. So 15 plus 12 is 27, and 15 minus 12 is 3. Okay, x squared minus 14x plus 24. Again, completing the square, so I'm going to take the 24 to the other side. So I'm going to have x squared minus 14x plus something equals negative 24 plus something. I'm not leaving myself very much room. Okay, so half of 14 is 7. Squared is 49. So when I factor that, remember, x without the 2, sine of the second term, 7 without the 2, squared. Negative 24 plus 49 is 25. And now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And so x minus 7 equals plus or minus. The square root of 25 is 5. And I add 7 to move it to the other side. So that's 7 plus or minus 5, leaving me with 7 plus 5, which is 12. 7 minus 5, which is 2. Okay, moving right along. Write down any questions you have. Come see me if you need help. Okay, I see a common 2 in everything here. So I'm going to make my numbers smaller, and that's going to give me x squared plus 18x plus 50 equals 9. Now I have to take the 50 to the other side, so I'm going to have x squared plus 18x plus something equals 9 minus 50 is negative 41 plus something. So by taking half of my linear term, my b, which is 9, and I square it. And then I square it out on the other side. To factor, x without the 2, 9 without the 2, sine of the second term squared equals negative 41 plus 81 is 40. And now I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and that gives me x plus 9 equals plus or minus the square root of 40. So 40, y'all know, is 4 times 10, so that means that's going to be 2 square roots of 10. And I have to take the 9 over, so I will subtract 9 plus or minus 2 square roots of 10. And we can't combine those. They are not like terms, so we get to stop at that. Okay, moving on to the next set. We have our quadratic formula, which I probably should write up here. It is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And if you want to hear me sing, got to go back to the video on 4.7. All right, so let's go solve by quadratic formula. pause real quick. Okay, remember also when you're doing the quadratic formula, just like we talked about before, that before you figure out what A, B, and C are, you have to have everything set equal to 0 again. So we're going to have to do a little something different on that one. Okay, so looking at the first one, we have that A is equal to 2, B is equal to 5, and C is equal to 4. So I'm going to have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So when you simplify this, because you have to give me an exact answer, you're better off just putting this part in your calculator. So when you put in 25 minus 32, you should have gotten negative 7 for an answer, or you can put it in just like that. And the only thing that you need to do to simplify that is make sure you don't leave a negative under your radical. So this will be negative 5 plus or minus I square roots of 7 all over 4. And that's fine. You don't have to break it up past that. Okay, let's look at the next one. 2x squared minus 4x minus 10. Okay, you can do it just like that. Okay, but keep in mind that everything, you'll either need to simplify it now or you're going to have to simplify it at the end. And it's a lot easier if you see it now. So here, I'm going to divide everything by 2 because I have an equation. I can divide both sides by that and not have to worry about the 2 anymore. So that gives me x squared minus 2x plus 5 equals 0 divided by 2 is 0. So back to that, that means that a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 2, and c is equal to 5. So x equals, I like to write it down because then it lets me know if I've made a mistake, what's the deal. So that's the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared. Again, I have a negative. I've talked to you over and over again about putting that in parentheses, so please make sure you do that. Anytime you have a negative number, put it in parentheses because it can totally change your answer if you don't. Over 2 times 1. So that gives me x equals, obviously negative negative 2 is a positive 2 plus or minus the square root of, that's 4 minus 20, which is negative 16 over 2. So I'm going to go across with that because we're going to run out of room. That is 2 plus or minus. The negative gives me an I, and the square root of 16 is 4. So it looks like that. And so I've talked to y'all about simplifying that. 2 goes into 2. It's got to go into both of these. So actually how I have you write that, x equals 2 over 2 plus or minus 4 over 2 times I. So when you simplify it, you're going to have that x equals 1 plus or minus 2I. So hopefully that makes good sense to you. Okay, so look at this next one. 3x squared plus 7x plus 3. Nothing to do to simplify, and there's no negative. So a is 3, b is 7, and c is 3. So I'm going to have x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Oh, Pooh Bear. Sorry. I forgot what I was doing. I'm supposed to be putting numbers in there. So that gives me b squared, 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times 3, all over 2a, which is 2 times 3. So x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 minus 36, and 49 minus 36 is 13, all over 6, and there's nothing you can do with it, so we could just leave that like that. Okay? And this last one, oh, that's something different because I don't have it anywhere close to that standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So I need to multiply this out. So on this side, that gives me 2x squared plus 10x equals 3x plus 9. Okay, you have to distribute for each parentheses. And then I bring everything to one side, so that's 2x squared plus 10x, not 10x, because I gotta bring the 3x over. 10x, I bring it over by subtracting, so that's 10x minus 3x, which is 7x. Bring the 9 over. So that means that A is 2, and B is 7, and C is negative 9. So x equals negative B plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. So I put parentheses because I got a negative value in there. All over 2 times a. And so x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of, that's 49 plus 72. And so that's 121. And so I know that y'all recognize that to be negative 7 plus or minus 11, because that's the square root of 21 over 4. So that gives me x equals negative 7 plus 11. Negative 7 plus 11 is 4. Over 4 is 1. Negative 7 minus 11 is negative 18. And negative 18 over 4 becomes negative 9 over 2, because there's a common factor there. So that's what we have. Okay, going on to the discriminant. Now, I hope you remember or realize the discriminant is just that part right here that's under the radical. That is your discriminant. Okay? So the only thing that I have to calculate in these problems is b squared minus 4ac. Still got to make sure everything is set equal to 0. So that means a equals 1, b equals 8, and c equals 16. So b squared minus 4ac is going to be 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. Well, that's 64 minus 64, which is 0. It says find the discriminant. So I found out the discriminant was 0. It says how many real solutions are they? If it is 0, you go back to that chart if you don't remember, but that tells you that you have one real solution. Okay, on to the next one. Again, everything is already set equal to 0, so a equals 1, b equals 3, c equals 12. So my b squared, 3 squared, minus 4 times a times c, well, that means that's 9 minus 48, and 9 minus 48 is negative 39. Okay, so this is no real solution. And this is something, y'all, that we've talked about that you can use to prove that a quadratic equation has no solutions. Okay? If you can't factor it or can't figure it out, go find the discriminant and it'll tell you that. Okay? 4x squared plus 9x equals 12x. I got to get it all equal to 0. So 4x squared minus 12x, because to bring that over I subtract, plus 9 equals 0. And so there's my a is 4, b is negative 12, c is 9. So b squared, you got a negative number, y'all, put parentheses around it before you do anything else. Squared, b squared minus 4 times a times c. And that is 144 minus 144, which is 0. And as we just had over here, that means that we have one real solution. All right. This last one, 2x squared plus 12x equals negative 7. Again, I got to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to have 2x squared plus 12x plus 7 equals 0. I can't divide 2 by, but if you could, it would simplify things. I don't think I had that anywhere on these problems. And so b squared, a is 2, b is 12, c is 7. So b squared, 12 squared, minus 4 times a times c. So that's 144 minus 56, and that gives us 88. And that is different from these. We had 0 is real solution, one real solution, negative is none, and a positive number actually means that we have two real solutions. All right, on to the back side. So this problem, solve each equation using our graphing calculator, sketch and label your solutions. So yes, you will need a graphing calculator when you take the test, okay? If there's any problem with you getting a graphing calculator, you need to see me right before you take the test. You need to talk to me before then, okay? Now, this is what we did in 4.5, and the point of this problem is that you can take any equation that you have and set it equal to 0, and then plug in 0 for y. So I still have to set this thing equal to 0, just like we've been doing. So that gives me 4x squared. Take that over becomes plus 16x. Take that over becomes plus 16 equals 0. And so then what I'm doing is on my calculator, instead of 0, I'm going to plug in y. And that's how I'm getting an equation. So I have my Inspire program, so we can pull that up. And we got to remember that 4x squared plus 16x plus 16. So I'm going to go here, and remember you're on a graphing screen, and if you don't have your menu up here, then just hit the tab key. And I believe we said that was 4x squared plus 16x plus 16. And when you hit enter, that graphs your equation. So you have two options here, okay? You can look at it and say, well, that looks like negative 2. And I want you to know that you can hit Control T, kind of like on a computer. Control T brings up your table. And if negative 2 was a solution, then when I got to negative 2, it would be 0. So that's enough to say, okay, that's my root. Control T also takes off your table. The other way, if you don't want to look at it that way, or you want to be absolutely sure, you hit Menu, hit Analyze, and we're going for the 0. And remember, we do the lower bound and the upper bound, and it tells us that our 0 is at negative 2, 0. So I'm going to go back to mine. Now, what it says to do is to sketch the graph. So what you would see on yours, if you were to sketch it, I want you to go boom, okay? And I want you to mark that that's negative 2 on your graph. And so in the answer blank, you're going to write x equals negative 2. But this is the work that you would put on your paper to let me know that what you put into the calculator. And that's all you have to do to sketch it. Okay, that graph didn't show us where it intercepted the y-axis, so you shouldn't put that on your graph. All right, this one is already done for us. We have 4x squared plus 2x plus 3. So I'm going to go here, and remember tab brings up that equation line again. You can, if you want to, just go up and just take that one off. That might be easier because then you don't have two things on there. So we had 4x squared plus 2x plus 3. And what did that do to my graph? Oh, look at that. Okay? So this is my graph right here. Do you know what that point is? Okay? You should know what that point is because I do tell you all the time that whatever this number is right here, that 3 is our y-intercept. So that's the point 0.03, but you can see that the vertex is a little bit lower than that. So when I go back to sketch that, I'm going to go back and I know that it didn't intersect, and so I'm just going to do this, whatever. That was pretty bad. Let me try that again. So I come down, something like that, okay? and this point right here, because I just want some marking so you have some idea. That's my y-intercept. So the y-intercept over here, that was right there. It's positive 16, way up there. But that's my y-intercept. What is the solution? What are the zeros? So remember, if it doesn't ever touch the x-axis, this problem has no solution. Okay? So now let's go do the last one. That one was already set to 0, so I didn't have to write anything down. This one is not, so whichever side you want to bring it to, we'll go ahead and take it that way. And so that means in my thing I'm going to put 1/3 x squared plus 2x equals 0, and that's of course going to be my y. It does not matter which way you take it. You will get the same answer, but your sketch will be different. So that's why I want to know what you put in the calculator so that I know that that'll match the sketch that you put on your graph. Okay, so let's go back and put that in there. Again, remember we hit tab and then we went up because we wanted to take that one out. Okay, I'm going to type 1 divided by 3. You know what? I want it to be a fraction. So if I hit Control divided by, it puts it into a fraction like that. And then I hit the right arrow to come outside of that fraction. And then I have x squared, and then what we have plus 2x. And then I hit enter. And there is my graph. Okay. It looks pretty clear that it's at 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, I might just go look at the table. We said we had 0. Well, 0, 0 is it. And then we said the other one was negative 6. So it does. It happens at negative 6. So you don't have to do the analyze if you can just look at the table really quickly and see those points. But if it didn't come up on the table like that, then you would go to analyze because it's going to be a decimal or a fraction. Okay? So let's go sketch that graph. And if you remember, it did something like this. Went through there and it went through here. Okay? So that, of course, is my origin at 0, and this point was negative 6. So my answer will be x equals 0 or negative 6. And that's all you have to do. All right, on to our complex numbers. This is the last section on our test here. Find the absolute value of each complex number. Okay, remember that a complex number is a plus bi. So the absolute value is when we did the square root of a squared plus b squared. And I did tell you, well, we'll get there in a second. So this is 5i, which confused some people, but that's the same thing as 0 plus 5i. So that means a is 0 and b is 5. And the square root of 5 squared, I know you all know, is 5. So that one's good. Now, the other thing that I've asked you to do is when you have a negative, I want you to ignore it because whenever you square it, it's going to be positive anyway, and the negative doesn't matter. Negative has no bearing on our absolute value. So this is going to be 3 squared. The coefficient of I is 1, so 3 squared plus 1 squared. This is 9 plus 1, which is the square root of 10. And then we have another one. Again, ignore your negative sign. So this is 8 squared plus 3 squared, and that's 64 plus 9, which is the square root of 73. So we're good. All right, simplify. We simplify by combining like terms. Okay? So that means the real parts go together and the imaginary parts go together. So 3 plus 6 is 9. Negative 8 and negative 8 is negative 16i. That's all we got. Okay? Again, with subtraction, the only thing that people mess up on is they forget to distribute that negative to both parts here. So, negative 5 minus negative 5 is actually, that kind of goes away because that's plus 5. Negative 5 plus 5. And then we have negative I minus 2i, and that's negative 3i. If we ever have 0, we don't write the 0 in there. Okay? All right, the next one looks like what you would imagine. It's that FOIL thing that we have to do because we are multiplying. There's no minus or plus in between them. So I do the first terms, okay? First terms, 7 times 4, which is 28. And then I'm going to do the outside terms. 7 times 10 is 70 times 10i is 70i. And then I'm going to do the inside terms. Negative I times 4 is negative 4i. And then I'm going to do the last terms. And that's negative I times 10i squared, 10i, which is negative 10i squared. A lot of people forget that squared there. And we've talked about numerous times that I squared is negative 1, so it just changes that sign, and of course makes you have a real number of positive 10. So when I combine my like terms, 28 plus 10 is 38, and 70i minus 4i would be 66i. Okay, and our lovely friend division, this is when we multiply by the conjugate. So we have 3 minus 2i. The conjugate is when you write the exact same thing you have on the bottom, but you change the sign of the second number only. So since that was minus, now we're making it plus. And we've talked about how that gives us on the bottom a squared plus b squared. So that's 9 plus 4. Okay, if you put a minus sign, you're just ignoring me all the time. I'm sorry. Okay, so again, we've got a FOIL. We have a binomial times a binomial, just like we did here. So we're going to have all these terms up top to start with. So 4 times 3 is my first term, is 12. Outside is 4 times 2i, which is 8i. Inside is I times 3, which is 3i. And the last term's I times 2i, which is 2i squared. And I squared changes my 2 to a negative 2 instead of a positive 2. So now when I want to combine 12 minus 2, I'm going to get 10. Um, and then 8i plus 3i is 11i, all over 13. And these are complex numbers, so we do need to write them in the form of a plus bi. So we put 10 over 13 plus 11 over 13i. And that is our answer. Okay, I think these are the last problems we got. Use the method of your choice, solve each equation below with a set of complex numbers. Oh my goodness. Oh, no, no, no. Okay, sorry. Brief lapse. All right, so look at the first one. Negative 6x squared. We didn't have one like this in factoring above, but this is one where b is equal to 0. I don't have an x term. And if that's the case, it's going to be easiest if I take that to the other side. Negative 6x squared equals 114 because I added it. Then divide by negative 6. So x squared equals negative 19. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 19. Now 19 cannot be broken down, but you can't leave a negative underneath. So x equals plus or minus I square roots of 19. So that is the work that you need to show me when you do that kind of problem. All right. X squared plus 7x plus 12, that's a perfect square. That is not a perfect square. So it's not a PST. I can't do what I just did because I have a linear term, so I'm going to factor it. So that means I'm going to do a times c and get 12. So I'm looking for the factors of 12 that add to give me 7, 3, and 4. So I'm just showing the work for people just to reinforce it. So that's x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 12 equals 0. I just broke up the 7x to 3x and 4x. And then I find the common factor of the first two and the last two. So that gives me x times x plus 3 plus 4 times x plus 3. And now I have a common factor of x plus 3, leaving me with x plus 4. And so I set each factor equal to 0, x plus 3 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0, and that means that x equals negative 3 or negative 4. Okay, last problem. Um, if I brought the 1 over, y'all, I would have to find the factors of 1 that add up to 4. Well, there aren't any. So I'm left with, I cannot factor this thing. So I can either do the quadratic formula or complete the square. And you might think I'm crazy, but I'm going to complete the square because that's an even number and makes it not so bad to complete the square. I wouldn't do it if it was an odd number. So minus 4x, I have my minus 1 over there, so I'm just thinking through that before I bring the 1 over and decide I want to do quadratic formula. Take half of that number, which is 2, and square it, and you add it to both sides. And you factor x without the 2, 2 without the exponent, bring down your minus sign of the second term, squared. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. And this is that point where we take the square root of both sides. And so I get x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. So bring the 2 over, and x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. Alright, that's the end of this study guide. I hope that it helped you, and I hope you wrote down any questions that you have, and that you will come see me if you need help. Thank you.